Ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency is an inherited disorder of the urea cycle, which causes a buildup of ammonia. If you haven't already watched our scene on the urea cycle, I would recommend starting with that video to help you contextualize this disease. Now, it's pretty difficult to remember all the labs and findings in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency, but I'll give you a visual trick to master this disease for test day. It's wintry out, and I hope you brought some festive cheer. We've decorated our tree this year a little differently. Just take a look at this ornament train. By the way, ornament train makes me think of ornithine transcarbamylase. Ornament for ornithine and train for transcarbamylase. Get it? This ornament train is here to help you remember the defective enzyme in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency, which is, obviously, ornithine transcarbamylase. Next, let's take a look at the top of this Christmas tree, at this small cross. Yep, this small cross is a recurring symbol for X-linked recessive inheritance. For exam writers, this means that clinical vignettes about ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency will always involve male patients. That's right, I'm talking about boys and a family history of grandfathers, dads, and uncles. Ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency is special because it's just about the only urea cycle disorder inherited in an X-linked recessive pattern. Most of the others are autosomal recessive. Just remember our small cross here to recall that the inheritance of ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency is X-linked recessive. Now, with every tree comes presents, and your dad has gotten you the best present of all, a unicycle. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Super practical for the morning commute, right? This unicycle also happens to be our symbol for the urea cycle, since both start with the letter U and end with cycle. Ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency is the most common disorder of the urea cycle, a fact you can remember by just picturing this unicycle. Actually, your dad just uses the holidays as an excuse to buy himself stuff he wants. I mean, see that box of ammo high on the shelf? I heard your dad was quite the hunter. This ammo is a recurring symbol for ammonia, and it's elevated on the shelf to remind you that ammonia levels are elevated in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. Hyperammonemia is another term for elevated ammonia in the blood, and this presents mainly as lethargy or asterixis, which is a flapping of the hands when the wrists are extended backwards. Exam writers also want you to understand why ammonia builds up. We've already explained that this disease is a urea cycle defect, and you can imagine that defects of the urea cycle interfere with the body's ability to eliminate ammonia, causing it to build up. Just remember this elevated box of ammo here to remember that ammonia is increased. So now we've covered the most important clinical finding of ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency, which is hyperammonemia. Let's take a look at some of the other things we have around this tree. First, notice these festive buns on the floor. Your dad really likes eating these buns, and he puts them out for Santa, for himself, to eat every single holiday. There's only one bun left, and it looks like someone's already taken a big bite out of it. You might even say that the level of buns here is very low. This is a perfect symbol because patients with ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency have decreased BUN, or blood urea nitrogen, on labs. But why is blood urea decreased? Well, recall how ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency is a defect of the urea cycle. The urea cycle takes ammonia and turns it into urea for excretion. So, if the urea cycle is defective, it makes sense that urea levels would decrease in the blood. Hence, the decreased blood urea nitrogen, or decreased bun. Just remember that your dad almost polished off all the buns here, and you'll have this lab finding under wraps. Afterwards, take a look at these bottles of car oil on the shelf. Yep, yet another thing your dad got for himself. So much for Christmas being about family. This car oil, high on the shelf, is here to help you remember that carbamoyl phosphate levels are elevated in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. Get it? Car oil for carbamoyl phosphate? This elevation of carbamoyl phosphate can also be explained by the urea cycle pathway. Recall how ornithine transcarbamylase uses carbamoyl phosphate to produce citrulline. Well, when this enzyme is defective, everything upstream builds up, including carbamoyl phosphate. Just remember our elevated car oil to remember that carbamoyl phosphate levels are increased in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. Lastly, let's focus on the decor of this room. Your dad has some strange decorative tastes. See that erotic art high up on the wall? This erotic art is here to help you remember orotic acid. Get it? Erotic art for erotic acid? Anyways, this is one of your dad's favorite paintings, and he's mounted it high up on the wall here to help you remember that orotic acid is elevated in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. We've already explained why carbamoyl phosphate builds up in ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. But what we didn't cover already is that carbamoyl phosphate is also a player in the de novo pyrimidine synthesis pathway. Therefore, since it can't be used for making urea, the excess carbamoyl phosphate is instead shunted down an alternate pyrimidine synthesis pathway, producing, you guessed it, orotic acid. One way this is commonly tested is by comparing ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency against orotic acid urea, a disorder of the pyrimidine synthesis pathway. What I want you to remember here is that compared to ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency, orotic acid urea does not present with hyperammonemia. This should be obvious, since the urea cycle and elimination of ammonia is not affected in orotic acid urea like it is in this disease. Just might get you one more question right on exam day. And that's it for ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency. Wow, what a mouthful of a name. Let's recap. Ornithine transcarbamylase deficiency is the most common disorder of the urea cycle. Inherited in an X-linked recessive pattern, affected patients will have elevated ammonia levels, manifesting as lethargy and asterixis. Other laboratory findings included decreased BUN, elevated carbamoyl phosphate, and elevated orotic acid level. And now we're actually done. Thanks a lot, Dad. We'll see you next time.